Welcome all. We've all waited eagerly to see which Agito would be cursing us with their presence next, and now he's here. Light Agito Cayenne. Cayenne? Alright, it's starting with me mispronouncing things. It's off to a good start. Welcome all. Discoria here with an all-new guide type that I'm going to be calling Prep School, with the spotlight on Cayenne. Today, I'm going to discuss how to prep for this fight with regards to weapon progression, how to equip a few different characters for the fight, different team comps you might see, and the reasoning behind them. And then part 2 of this video, which will be posted probably in a couple days, will give a detailed walk through the fight. This guide, Prep School, is geared towards those trying to tackle the expert version of the fight, as the requirements to clear standard are fairly low. So, though Cayenne requires less DPS than Volk to clear, you will still want to ensure that you have the proper weapon crafted so that you can contribute to your team. Let's navigate over to the crafting screen, and we'll take a quick look at this. Dragalia Lost has a weapon crafting progression to help players as they continue to clear harder and harder content, which eventually allows you to craft the weapons you will want to take on Cayenne. But there are honestly so many weapons now on the crafting page, it can be pretty intimidating. Fear not, I shall walk you through it. I'm going to start at the very start for this, so no matter where you are, hopefully this will be helpful information for you. Pretty much at the start. I'm not going to discuss in too much detail how to construct a core weapon stage 3, because I am going to assume you've gotten that far. Some people may disagree, but if you are a DPS unit, I would recommend entering the fight with a High Dragon Trial Stage 2 weapon, which for the purposes of the rest of this video, I'm going to call the HDD2 weapon, because the other version of that is a mouthful for sure. It doesn't need to be max unbound. A 0 unbound HDD2 weapon will work. This will allow you to meaningfully contribute to the fight, provides a little extra HP and strength to give a margin of error during the fight itself. If you have friends willing to carry you, you could probably get away with a max unbound High Dragon Trial Stage 1 weapon or a max unbound Chimera Tech weapon, but pubs are probably going to be less likely to want to carry. There is an exception to this for the Patia. It seems to be that, based on input that I've received from my alliance and a number of other individuals, shout out to Pia Main, double Patia can probably run max unbound Chimera Tech weapons. So they might be the exception to that rule, but for most other characters, I'd say to be safe, you're going to want to be running with an HDD2 weapon. Over to the healers, lucky you guys, you have lower requirements. Healers can get away with a max unbound HDD1 or a Chimera Tech weapon for Cayenne, max unbound Chimera Tech weapon. Not every group comp runs a healer, and I'll get to that when I start discussing different team comps that clear consistently. But I personally like healers in this fight. I do. And I'm still seeing lots of them in pubs, so I don't think it's a bad idea to break into the fight this way if building an HDD2 is absolutely out of the question for you. So let's start with the crafting path to get you to that HDD2 if you are a DPS. There's no easy way to break this to you. If you're starting from scratch, this is going to take a while. Requirements to build an HDD2 for any character includes, I'm going to bring one up so that it'll make kind of sense while I'm reading it out to you. Okay, this is an HDD2 weapon. So, requirements to build any HDD2 is going to include 130 High Dragon Tails, 30 High Dragon Horns, 35 Dragon Hearts, 175 High Dragon Orbs, 8 Orichalcum, 33 golden whetstones, 1 silver whetstone, and 2 bronze whetstones. Don't be overwhelmed by this list, though. Let's go through what you need to clear to gather these items. Whetstones are easily earned in Imperial Onslaughts, so you've likely gathered enough of them if you've been playing for a while by now to fulfill the crafting requirements. If not, you'll have to do a little bit of grind there. Maybe a lot of grind, I'm sorry. The Dragon Hearts, which have different names, kind of based on what element weapon you're crafting, like Ebony Heart, for example, which I'm showing right now, which is for dark type weapons, can be farmed from standard and expert level void battles. You'll want to check carefully with void battle drops, so you can make sure that the right element heart for the weapon you are building is dropping from that specific fight. because they drop from the different bosses. So that can be accomplished by clicking the how to acquire kind of the how to acquire button on this screen, and it'll tell you which void fight you need to clear to have that drop. Once you have the hearts and whetstones, next you can tackle obtaining the orichalcum. These drop from any high dragon trial fights in the expert level, as you can see here. Okay, so let's go back. Finally, the last set of materials you need, and the ones that unfortunately take the longest, are the tails and the wings. These need to be farmed in the element in which you are building your HDD2 weapon in. For example, if you're crafting an HDD2 bow for Nefaria, which I'm showing the example for right now on the screen, you're going to need 130 Zodiark tails and 30 Zodiark horns. The tails can be farmed from each respective high dragon trial fight as the weapon element you're trying to build, but the horns will need to be farmed from the master level of the high dragon fight. So, why is that different? Sorry, I didn't say expert. Sorry, the tails can be farmed from each respective high dragon trial fight in the expert level, but the horns need to be farmed from the master level of the fight. Don't despair. If you've saved a chest, your first clear of a master high dragon trial fight should give you the 30 horns you need. It isn't always the case because of unlucky drops, but my fingers are crossed for you. There are a few other requirements before you can craft your HDD2 weapon. It does require that you have also built precursor weapons in the element that you're constructing in. For example, to craft Ocean's Embrace, and I'm just going to bring that up here, which is the HDD2 water staff. Okay, let's go into view tree here. Okay, so this is a weapon I haven't built any precursor weapons for because I haven't just never had characters that call for it. So this is why I'm showing this as an example. So to craft Ocean's Embrace, you'll need to have built Bracing Waters, which is a core weapon level 5 stage 3, and Endless Azure Core Void Agni stage 3 water staff. You'll be able to find the precursor weapon requirements for your desired HDD2 when you click the craft button on the weapon tree, having highlighted that HDD2 weapon. That's exactly what I've done to get to this screen. So just going back again, just to give you another look at that, you're going to go to the weapon you're interested in the element that you're interested in, hit view tree, and then hit the second weapon in the progression, and then hit craft, and it'll show you what your precursor requirements are to build. Okay, so at this point, you've got your materials. Now you can craft the all-powerful HDD2 weapon that will you get into the fight, right? Not quite. You're going to want a bit more of an understanding of what other equipment you need before you can punch Cayenne directly in the face. When it comes to wyrmprints, there's a lot of different options because this fight is significantly more accessible than Volk was. I've seen a lot of cool combinations, but I'm going to focus on what I know works for the units I know best. So also, keep in mind your print choice might change depending on your team composition. I'll start with Nefaria, who I know best as I play her. I normally play in 2 different team compositions when I play with friends or pubs. The first one is Nefaria, Glio, and Flex. So when I say flex, I basically mean this spot could be taken by any strong unit, such as like a very buff Botan or something else. The second comp that I play with sometimes is the 4 DPS comp, which has a lot of different combinations of characters, but I do end up playing a lot with either a poison DPS comp that includes Nef, Glio, Lathna, and Flex, or Nef, Delphi, Lathna, and Flex. That's the one I seem to see the most, but I've seen lots of other ones too. There are a ton of combinations, and that just harkens back to how inclusive this fight is overall, which is just awesome. So, you have a taste of team compositions now. Let's look at wyrmprint selection. For Nef, I use Dear Diary and Forest Bonds if I'm playing with a healer comp. The selection is pretty self-explanatory, but essentially, Dear Diary allows you to boost your critical rate by 10% for the, critically rate. Yeah, it allows you to boost your critical rate pretty substantially, increasing your strength by 10% for the duration of the fight. Unless you are incredibly pro and never go underneath 30% health during the early phases of the fight, I am the opposite of pro, and I always collect this benefit from Dear Diary. It also gives you, your critical rate goes up by that 40%. So Forest Bonds, which is the other print that I use, let me just bring that up here. It boosts your skill damage by 40% and increases your striking haste by 12%. The combination of these 2 prints gives a kick-ass boost to your damage output, and that's why I use them. When I'm running an all DPS composition, which I don't end up doing very often, you're going to want to have a different wyrmprint loadout. So the first one I use for this quite a bit is, didn't mean to click that, is Valiant Crowns. This is the one everybody seems to use for the DPS comps, so it should apply, it applies in most scenarios, I believe. Valiant Crown, Valiant Crown gives a further boost to your strength of 10% every time a defense up buff is received on your character, as well as it also increases your skill damage by 30%. So there's a few characters that grant defense up buffs. Patia does this especially well, as her quick to charge S1 grants a defense up buff to her entire team. So on top of that, I pair that with Odd Sparrows. So Odd Sparrows is a really cool print that allows a HP regen buff to be applied, along with an increase to your strength of 8% every time your character receives a defense up buff. So as I just said earlier, if you're running with Patia, she does that especially well. So you'll see a lot of activation of Odd Sparrows, which I think, that is why you're seeing a lot of team comps for DPS that run double Patia. Just as a helpful aside, if you're running with the double Patia, Neff, Flex, all DPS comp, you should always have that. Just to reiterate, you should always have that Odd Sparrows and Valiant Crowns equipped. So when it comes to recommending prints for healers, I don't run a healer actively, but I have questioned my alliance and I've done some research, and the combinations that I have seen work effectively include Study Rabbits and Bridal Dragon, or Give Me Your Wounded and a Suit of Midnight. The first print in each pair is to support your healing and defense efforts, and the second print is your Dragon Prep. A Suit of Midnight also has the benefit of granting Affliction Guard, so that if you have the Dragon Fatalis equipped, you're not prevented from shapeshifting later on in the quest. This effect is nice, but it's not a must-have, as you can let Cayenne inflict blind on you fairly easily, which cancels out the curse status that prevents you from shapeshifting. Okay, so let's go back to the main here. We've covered all kinds of useful info at this point, but we do have one last important piece. What dragon should you use? This is actually a really fun conversation because, again, Cayenne is so accessible. So your choices for dragon should reflect the character you're playing, but you could really run anything from Shinobi to Marashitan to Fatalis. It probably needs to be max unbound. I know that's lame, but it's necessary. With Neff, I use Shinobi. I really like Fatalis, but I cause enough accidental deaths for my team without needing to remember to inflict blind to cancel the curse that prevents more shapeshifting, so I don't use Fatalis. I often see Cleo with Fatalis equipped, but I would say just as often as I see some other dragons like Shinobi. Honestly, as a healer, my guess is you could probably get away with Needhog, and I myself am tempted to try and get a clear with Ibisu Cleo with HDD2, but I digress. So, I'm going to assume at this point you've had just enough of me talking, but I am happy to report that you've covered all the info, most of the info, that you will need to prep for Cayenne. I didn't go into intense detail on prepping units like Delphi or Patia, because I'm not going to speak about things that I'm not an expert on. I know more about Neff. I did speak about the all DPS wyrmprint equipped setup, and for most people, it's going to be fairly straightforward to understand how characters need to be upgraded to make sure that their strength and HP are complementing their HDD2 weapons, wyrmprint selections, and dragon selections. So, for part 2 of this video, which will actually guide you through the Cayenne fight itself, should hopefully be up in the next few days. It will kind of progress through the mechanics of the fight and best practices for increasing DPS. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join our community for playing games together by following me on Twitch. See ya, everyone!